Welcome to Storm the Gates, Book 3 of the Rogue Gods Trilogy by Melinda Kucsera.
Part 14, Chapter 53, Thoughts and Prayers. What the hell was Faye saying? Rosalie bit her tongue until blood welled from it. Unfortunately, that drop of blood didn't dribble out of her mouth, so she couldn't use her blood magic to turn it into spikes. Well, there went that plan. Maybe it was the lack of air making her hallucinate, or the dragon's giant red swirling eyes staring at her like Faye was trying to tell her something. Flames danced in the ex-goddess of fate's eyes like the ones that surrounded her when she teleported. Oh, is that what she's trying to tell me? Can I teleport now that I have Pristina's time crystal and her magic? If so, then she was getting out of here ASAP. Rosalie pictured the first place she thought of, which just so happened to be the library at Mount Eredrin, and the tunnel and the hand squeezing her throat vanished. Fog appeared and it surrounded her, and then storm clouds appeared above her. Why did I end up in the gray between again? I was trying to go to Mount Eredrin. Rosalie pictured the grassy area surrounding that mountain's feet as an elephant trotted toward her. Oh, hell no. I'm not dealing with any memory eaters.
You don't belong here. Leave now or we'll throw you out.
The memory eater pointed their trunk at her like she might not know who they meant. You can relax. I'm leaving. Rosalie remembered the feel of thick grass under her boots and pictured the switchback path leading up the mountain to its glowing doors as the memory eater and the gray between vanished. Grass appeared under her boots, and Mount Eredrin stood close by, shadowing part of the meadow. The river Nirthal flowed past the mountain as the afternoon sun sparkled on its wide blue expanse. On the other side of the mountain, a lot of tents stood in neat rows. Why are there so many tents pitched on the green? They weren't here the last time I visited. Before she could speculate about that, a bright green glow snagged her attention, and she turned toward the enchanted forest. Beyond those weird standing stones that ringed Mount Eredrin twice, a giant, eye-shaped cloud of darkness towered over Sarn. But he didn't look like that bothered him, given his rigid stance and squared shoulders. Shafts of green light shot up from the ground and severed the black tentacles extruding from the eye-shaped abomination, and they looked like giant prehensile eyelashes as they whipped about trying to grab onto anything they could. But Sarn cut them down as quickly as they appeared. Nor was he alone. Two angels slashed through them too, but only one angel wore armor, and she wielded a sword. The other angel wore a long white dress and swung a scythe like she wasn't sure what to do with it. That was a strange weapon for an angel. It made her look like a reaper from a bard's tale. The eye-shaped thing flickered and shook as its severed tentacles fell to the ground in pieces. I'll bet that's the other end of the gateway. Since Avarian was somewhere inside it, she steeled herself for the unpleasantness to come and strode toward it. I'm gonna regret this, I just know it. But Rosalie put one foot in front of the other anyway, and only paused when she met the curious green eyes of the little boy Sarn clutched to his chest. Well, that explained why he just stood there, out of reach of the tentacles. He was protecting Ran. Thank God he's on the side of the angels, literally. Rosalie didn't want to imagine someone as powerful as Sarn choosing the side of evil. She shuddered at the thought. May that never happen. Ran pointed at her. Someday, I'll be your friend, and we'll get into a lot of trouble together. But not so much that we can't get out of it later. Rosalie smiled and almost laughed at the number of times they tried to find the farms under Mount Eredrin and how terrible Ran was at sneaking around. May that never change.
I don't know about that. It sounds weird.
Ran scowled at her and rested his head on his father's shoulder again. At his tender age, he probably thought girls were weird. Oh well, his loss. The ground shook as someone let loose a wordless cry of anguish. Oh no, that sounded like Ivarian. Rosalie waved goodbye to a boy who would become her best friend in the future.
That's my cue, come daughters. Someone calls us.
A woman wearing black robes with some kind of glowing symbols on her arms dived into the black heart of the gateway and vanished. 3 identically dressed women followed her. Who are they? Rosalie asked, not expecting an answer since Sarn was concentrating, and Ran was too little to know.
The ex-goddess of vengeance and her daughters.
Murren said from where he sat on a boulder, jotting down notes in a leather-bound book. It was weird seeing him as a teenager. When she last saw him, he was around 30. Thanks. I'd better follow them. I'm not sure what will happen when the gateway collapses, but make sure you're behind a strong shield when it does. Rosalie didn't think he was in any real danger. Sarn was a master at shielding, but that warning was all the payment she could give for his kindness and generosity in the future. Since the gateway blurred as it shook, throwing off dark threads, its collapse looked imminent. What will that do to anyone still inside the gateway tunnel when it collapses? Rosalie didn't know, so she ran until a green light welled up in front of her. She zigged and and zagged to avoid the shields rising from the ground to stop her. Sarn was a sweet man, but she didn't need him to save her. I must get into the gateway tunnel before this entrance collapses. The grass ended and gravel crunched under her boots. She ducked between two stones that stood taller than her, then between two more in the outer ring. Then she leapt into the swirling darkness in the center of the eye-shaped gateway. I'm coming, Avarian, and when I find you, I'll tie you to me so I don't lose you again. Then she'd pay Pristina back for screwing up her past, her present, and her future. Rosalie landed on a flexible black surface that shook as the walls of the gateway tunnel swirled around her like dark clouds. Maybe they really were clouds. Who knew what gateways were actually made of? Blades of green light tore through the swirling darkness behind her, shredding it into black motes that flew away, and the platform disintegrated behind her. Oh no, that's not good. Remind me to never anger Rand's dad, or ever underestimate him. Rosalie turned around and ran as fast as she could toward the faint glow ahead. Hopefully, that was where she last saw Ivarian and Pristina. That woman had better not hurt him. Rosalie ran for what felt like forever, but it was probably only a few miles in reality. That damned glow in front of her didn't brighten until a section of the wall disappeared. She skidded to a stop and stared at the icy tundra where the arrow of time should stand. But someone cut that massive arrow made of ice into blocks and knocked them askew, breaking the arrow. That can't be good. Rosalie hopped through the hole and her boots crunched on the snow. The cold dived into every seam of her trousers and skirt. Rosalie pulled her long sleeves down to cover her hands as she padded through the snow. Where was Ivarian?
We have to collapse the gateway,
Faye said from somewhere ahead. Rosalie rounded a chunk of ice many times taller than her, and there was the petite ex-goddess of fate, shivering as she stamped her feet to warm them. Sarn already took down the entrance to the gateway near Mount Eredrin.
That's good news, but we still need to collapse the other end.
Faye blew on her hands to warm them. Where's Pristina? Rosalie didn't see her anywhere, but the ex-goddess was transparent now that she was a ghost, so she could hide anywhere.
The last time I saw her, she was with the Adversary. They went that way.
Faye pointed away from the gateway. Where's Ivarian? Rosalie rubbed her arms through the thin fabric of her sleeves. Shouldn't he be with his aunt? He better not have left without me.
Wasn't he standing guard by the gateway? Daniel said he was.
Faye glared at the house-sized piece of ice blocking her view. No one was there when I arrived. Where did he go? Rosalie folded her arms to keep from wringing her hands. Why do I keep losing him?
And then, I don't know where he went. The last time I saw him was before the Adversary threw me through the wall of the gateway and knocked me unconscious. I know the Adversary, Pristina, and Daniel went that way, but that's all I'm sure of. I don't know where anyone else went.
Faye extended her arm and pointed into the distance. Why did everyone go that way? Rosalie rubbed her hands together.
This timeline began back there, but that's the place I can't go because I can't travel backward in time beyond the present moment. Just standing here is hard enough. My magic is trying to push me into the future where I belong.
Faye skidded until she dug her sandals into the snow, proving she wasn't kidding about the pushing part. And then you should go. You've done so much to help me. Thank you. Rosalie caught the ex-goddess hand and squeezed it.
If I had any sense at all, I'd go, but I'm still here because one sister is nuts, the other is dying, and I don't know what the Adversary is doing, but it can't be good. The worst part is that I can't do anything to help because of a deal I made thousands of years ago to save my family.
Faye clenched her fists and paced like a caged dragon. You could take down the other end of the gateway, Rosalie shrugged. That sounded like a reasonable suggestion, since Faye could transform into a dragon with sharp claws.
Yes, I could, but not by myself. Are you volunteering to help me?
Faye spun to face her, and her red eyes brimmed with fire. No, I need to go after Ivarian. Rosalie shook her head. Even though the thought of facing the Adversary again turned her knees to jelly, she still must face him.
And I need to know what will happen to my family. My two brothers are around here somewhere, avoiding all the drama.
Faye sighed and glanced around like she expected them to appear and report on their activities. Of course, they didn't do that. You should find them and make sure Hithuglair isn't working with Pristina anymore. Rosalie glanced around for him too. I thought I heard his voice when the Adversary choked me. I could have hallucinated that, but I don't think I did, because I would have hallucinated something else.
You're right. What about the gateway?
Faye pointed at it in case she'd forgotten it stood there. Will it collapse on its own? Doesn't it need a second terminus? It didn't have that anymore, thanks to Sarn and his earth magic. Rosalie wished she had some of it right now. His magic was handy in a fight with a giant inanimate object.
It acquired another one. Look there.
Faye pointed to the swirling, black, eye-shaped thing floating above the frozen ground. Black tentacles dug into the snow and the sky, anchoring it in place. Could you break those tethers? Rosalie studied them. They were as thick as tree roots and probably as strong. Damn, it was too bad Sarn wasn't here. But this was no place for a mortal, and as powerful as he might be, he was only human. And I'm not anymore, unless I can reverse what Layla did to me without destroying those I love.
Yeah, I'll find my brothers and we'll start demolishing it. You should go after them, but be careful.
Faye waved a hand in front of her face. What changed her mind? The center of the gateway lightened as an angel stepped through it, carrying a large glowing ball under one arm. Where did Arginil get that thing from? Behind him, Azariah stepped through the gateway, followed by Antali and a scruffy fellow in leather armor who looked familiar. Could he be the same war god Pristina summoned, then trapped in that magic circle? What were the odds of that happening?
Day, long time no see. How are you?
The armor-wearing guy opened his arms for a hug as he jogged toward them. Faye sidestepped him and neatly avoided the hug.
Hello, Guerren. What are you doing here?
Rosalie felt her jaw drop in shock. He was the same war god Pristina summoned.
I came with my friends to stop the adversary, of course.
Guerren turned and waved to the two angels and Natalie, but they didn't hurry to join them.
Oh, since when were you friends with angels?
Faye narrowed her eyes in suspicion, and that was the question running through Rosalie's head right now.
They helped me get my powers back.
Guerren threw an arm around each angel when the trio reached them.
Have either of you seen an angel called Taniel? She's about this tall and wears shiny armor.
Natalie glanced between them for an answer.
She went that way too.
Faye pointed at the same spot she'd pointed at several times now.
Thank you. Let's go, gentlemen.
Natalie extended their wings and flapped them until they rose from the snow.
What is this place?
Arginil turned as he studied it. It was the arrow of time. Come on. I'll explain as we go. If one of you will give me a lift. Rosalie glanced at the trio until Natalie extended a hand to her.
I'll fly you. It'll be a nice change after flying the ex-war god.
Natalie clasped her hand and reeled her in until they could wrap an arm around Rosalie's waist.
Then who's carrying me? You're not leaving me here. Not if there's a fight on the horizon.
Guerren glared at the two angels.
Fine, I'll carry you.
Azariah grabbed Guerren's arm and lifted off.
What about you?
Arginil asked Faye.
Unless you can amend the deal I made thousands of years ago, I can't go any further into the past than this spot. So I guess I'm cutting tethers again.
Faye gestured to the gateway's new terminus.
When you find the ex-goddess of vengeance and her daughters, send them back. Vengiana's swords would be damned useful on those tethers.
We'll do that, Rosalie agreed for them, because vengeance wasn't something they needed right now, and she'd like one less ex-goddess to deal with.
Then let's go. Rosalie, you'd better explain what this place is so we can put our heads together while we fly and come up with a plan.
Natalie said as they turned to face the horizon Faye pointed at and flew toward it. That sounded like a plan to Rosalie, so she told them what she knew. I hope Layla found the abyss, and she did what she went there to do. Since she couldn't check that, Rosalie had to trust her friend wouldn't fail.
Chapter 54. No time like the present. While Faye watched Rosalie and the angels fly off towards the horizon, her mind raced. Is it really that simple? She wasn't used to thinking such things, but what if they just needed to negotiate a new deal? Why did I never think of that? She shivered, not just from the cold as footsteps crunched on the ice-crusted snow behind her. Now who was coming? Faye steeled herself as she turned, in case she needed to fight someone.
I'm all out of power, so you're on your own this time,
said the dragon she bonded with a long time ago for mutual protection. But something went wrong with the spell, and they ended up sharing one physical form that could transform into a petite, black-skinned human woman or a giant red dragon. I'll survive. She always did. Faye rubbed the back of her all-too-human head through her long red braids that matched her nails. She ached all over from her fight with the adversary, but those aches faded away as a man walked toward her. He wore white robes gifts, like an angel, but he didn't have a halo. He didn't need one since his aura surrounded him with white light, making him a tad hard to see in this reflective polar environment. Why couldn't the adversary pick somewhere warmer to take over?
Hello, Faye.
JC said as he approached. Hello, it's been a while since I saw you. I'm not really sure when that was, since time is all messed up right now. Faye lowered her hands to her side since her head no longer ached. In fact, no part of her hurt anymore thanks to him. Healing was always his strongest gift.
The Holy Spirit said things were out of whack, but I didn't realize how much. That bird is the master of understatement.
JC shook his head in mock consternation. Yeah, well, the adversary likes to shove things out of whack for fun. Faye glanced down to make sure she was still clad in dragon scale armor from neck to toes, since her clothes could shift at will. She was still armored, and that was good because she'd probably need the protection since her immortality didn't make her invincible, just harder to kill than mere mortals.
I wish he'd stop doing that.
JC stopped a respectful distance away and muted his aura so she could see his face. He didn't have a set appearance because everyone believed he looked like them, so she saw a dark-skinned man of early 30s wearing plain sandals and unadorned robes. He won't. I'm not even sure if he could stop now since he rebranded himself the adversary and the enemy of the creator. Names have power, and that's one hell of a name. It casts a deep shadow, but you didn't come to talk about that. Faye folded her arms so she could stick her hands in her armpits to warm them. I hate the cold, I hate the snow, and I hate anyone who makes me experience either of them. But JC shook his head.
The balance of power shifted dangerously towards everything the adversary stands for, and I can't abide that. There must be balance. The world can't survive without it.
The word balance echoed off the giant blocks of ice. Now that I'm not concussed anymore, I can do something about that. It was good seeing you again. Give my love to your mother. Faye waved and slammed into an invisible wall before she took even one step. Ouch! She rubbed her face and turned around.
Why did you stop? You look like you ran into a wall, but there's just air there.
JC studied her. I forgot about the rules. Faye lowered her hand and glared at the gateway tunnel. It was all that spell's fault they were here, and the one place where she was constrained.
Which ones? Could you be a little more specific?
JC held his finger and thumb a little apart. That way lies the distant past, the one place I am forbidden to go by an oath I swore long ago to your father. Faye pointed at it, but her hand didn't smack into an invisible barrier. That was interesting.
Oh, you're talking about the covenant you and your siblings made with him.
JC nodded like he remembered that, even though he wasn't there for that. Maybe he was there as part of the creator. Faye dropped that line of thought. That was a matter for the theologians and priests to argue about, but it had no bearing on this conversation. Can you change it so I can pummel the adversary? Our fight got cut short in the tunnel since it left me no room to maneuver. That was the only reason he got the better of her. Faye would maintain that until her dying day.
Some things happening now are consequences my father would never have wanted. There's some suffering I need to address.
JC said, but what did he mean? His concerned expression didn't change at all. That's hard to believe since your father abandoned his creation. Faye stamped her feet to warm them. Dragon scales were wonderfully tough, but not very warm, since she bonded with a fire dragon from a desert climate.
Believe what you want. Everyone always does.
JC said softly, but not as a rebuke. Was he offering to amend her deal with his father and fix her problem with the past? So, can we negotiate a new deal now? Faye cut to the heart of the matter before she froze. She was a fire goddess with fire magic and thus not built for the cold. She removed her hands from her armpits because that wasn't warming them, and instead, she generated flames on each palm. That helped a little until the wind gusted and stole all the warmth from the fire.
Since that deal is tipping the balance in the adversary's favor, yes. Istiana?
JC glanced at a spot to her right.
I'm here.
Istiana said as she solidified, transforming from a transparent ghost to a flesh and blood pregnant woman, and she gripped her distended belly.
You can know about future events if someone tells you about them, but you cannot travel to the future or change someone's fate directly. The same goes for your children. Does that sound fair?
JC took her arm and led her to the gateway.
Quite fair,
Istiana said, as she sat on the edge of the platform. It floated at the right height for a chair. They snuffed out the flames and stood by her sister. What about me?
You still can't go to the past. You're too powerful just as you are. Changing your situation might disturb more than you can imagine. It's an inconvenience, but I think you'll agree it's the wisest course.
JC glanced at the gray sky. Faye did too. I hope it doesn't snow. I can't handle that right now. But if she had to deal with that pesky white stuff falling from the sky to save the world, she would do it for her kids. Fair enough, Faye said, and she shrugged, because that didn't change her situation one bit. Are you going to ask me to stay out of this? She waved to the this icy hellhole of a place? JC chuckled.
Oh no, I want you to meddle in the adversary's affairs as much as you can without going into the past.
But that's the problem. I can't get near him if he's moving backward in time. Faye pointed into the distance of this icy wasteland.
You won't have to.
JC patted her shoulder, then extended his other hand.
I'd like you to deliver something for me instead.
A white light bobbed on his palm like a hot flame, but it gave off no heat that Faye could feel. What is that? Faye leaned in to study the light. She could see auras, but this flame-looking thing just glowed white. Unfortunately, white magic was hard to parse, since it was just white, and white magic came in several varieties.
It's a wish someone made, and I'd like you to make sure it's fulfilled. As a goddess of fate, this is what you do. You live for this kind of thing.
JC tilted his hand, and the flame sprouted little glowing legs, then jumped into her palm like that wasn't the creepiest thing she'd seen in a while. How do I make this wish come true? Whose wish is it? Faye examined it from every angle until the flame grew little glowing arms and eyes that blinked at her. She almost dropped it in surprise.
It's a wish twice made, once by a young man from a timeline that no longer exists, and once by a boy who will grow up to become him in the one true timeline.
JC smiled like he was enjoying this, and he probably was. It wasn't every day that he gave orders to immortal beings who knew who and what he was. Okay, I like that part. Symmetry makes that magic stronger. At least she thought that's how white magic worked. It functioned on different rules than the elemental magic in her blood and bones. How do I fulfill this wish? My wish fulfillment skills are a little rusty, so I need a little more context than that.
Give it to an angel who calls herself Layla. She'll know what to do with it.
JC smiled again, like he knew something more than he was saying. All right, anything else? Faye cupped the wish in her hands. Could the wind blow it out? The wind must have heard her wondering that because it tested that theory, but the wish just glowed on her palm like nothing happened. Meanwhile, she shivered in her armor from the wind gusting past and stealing her warmth again. I swear this place is out to get me.
Just one more thing. Call the ex-goddess of vengeance. You'll need her and her swords. Her daughters might be useful too.
They already ran past here, and they're probably more useful where they went. Faye stamped her feet. That ex-goddess and her daughters weren't the only ones to go after the adversary.
Summon them back.
JC shrugged like that should be no big deal. And it wasn't, really? Why do I need them? Where's this Layla? Faye didn't see anyone else except the three of them. Isyana groaned like she was in terrible pain.
The baby's coming. I will have a son after all.
I'd better get you to somewhere safe where you can have your child. Faye grabbed her sister's hand and squeezed it, and the white flame creature jumped onto her shoulder. It was a weird little light.
That's why you need Vangiana and her daughters. Summon them. They'll come.
JC captured Istiana's other hand.
We need to find my husband. He must be there.
Istiana looked pleadingly at Faye, and she nodded. Of course we'll find and fetch him. Don't you worry about a thing. You'll go to my home. You can have your son there. Faye wrapped an arm around her sister's shoulders.
Call them.
JC prompted. Fine. Vangiana, grab your daughters and get your butt over here. I need your help. Faye shouted as loud as she could into the wind, and it flung her words back at her. Moments later, Vangiana appeared with 3 of her 7 daughters behind her.
Why did you call me?
She demanded as she gripped her swords. I need to take my sister to my home, find her husband, and make sure she delivers her baby safely. But you need to find some angel called Layla and give her this. Faye tilted her head toward the little glowing flame person on her shoulder. The creature took a hint and hopped onto Morgana's shoulder, not her mother's. That was interesting, but not something Faye could look into right now. There was also the gateway. You also need to collapse this gateway by finding all its tethers at both ends and severing them. Faye patted its exterior wall. Forget a safe collapse. That thing needed to break apart and become a bad memory.
Where do we find this, Layla?
Morgana touched the creature on her shoulder, but it didn't react. I can check the future. One moment, please. Faye generated a flame on her palm and shuffled through possible futures until she found one that included a rather stunned-looking Layla standing on an island, surrounded by a black fluid that rose and fell like waves on the sea. Where is this place?
That's in hell. If you go through the gateway and head downhill, you'll come out in the adversary's palace. Find a stairway leading down into the bowels of hell, and you'll find Layla at the bottom. Give her the wish. She could use it right about now.
JC pointed away from where the adversary went. How ironic that hell was directly opposite that.
What about your sister? She needs help now.
Mangiana's other daughter stepped forward. Faye tried to recall her name. Prakasa, maybe? Or Dharma? The girls looked so much alike they were hard to tell apart. It didn't help that they wore identical black dresses and cut and styled their dark hair the same way. Did they not want people to tell them apart? Are you offering to help help us. Faye shuffled through the futures again, searching for Istiana's husband and Avarian's father.
Yes, you need to take your sister to that safe place. While you do that, we can find her husband and bring him to you.
Rakasa or Dharma motion to her other sister.
Could you explain what's going on first? I'm a bit confused by all this.
Ungiana waved to the ice realm and the gateway tunnel. I'll give you the short version now while we move. The long version can wait. Faye crushed the flame on her palm and wondered what the short version was. Everything was so convoluted where the adversary was concerned. Faye climbed into the gateway and pulled on her dragon strength to hoist Istiana up.
That works for me.
Ungiana sent her blades away, then jumped onto the platform to show off. Just because she was taller didn't mean she had to flaunt it. Ungiana took Istiana's other arm and pulled it over her shoulders.
You'll be all right.
You said Layla is that way?
Morgana materialized on the platform behind them and pointed toward hell. Yeah, good luck. And Faye meant it. The girl nodded.
I'll tell you how it all turns out.
Morgana turned and strode into the darkness. She'll use her magic to find my home, right? Faye asked. And that should have bothered her. She hated immortals knowing where she lived, but the situation required it, so she'd deal with that later.
Yes, she can find us through our bond,
said one of the sisters. Maybe Dharma? Wish they'd stitch their names on their dresses or wear a pendant with their names engraved on it. That would help her tell them apart. Faye suppressed a sigh. She hated not being able to tell them apart.
Is she okay?
Gidaglir asked as he and Jannar climbed into the gateway. Oh, hell no. He couldn't show up at the last minute after he worked with Pristina to destroy the timeline. Faye glared at them. At least Jannar backed away. Hithaglir didn't. He had no shame. You caused this, and you'd better fix it. I don't care how you do it, but you'd better shore up the past and get the adversary out of it by any means necessary. Do you hear me?
I hear you.
Hithaglir stared at his boots. He still wore garish, overly decorated robes over equally ornate pants, and God knew what else. The man liked to dress in layers of richly decorated cloth. He probably wasn't even cold. Then get out of my sight and don't come near us until this mess is cleaned up. Faye gestured to the giant ice blocks scattered about, like they weren't blocks of past events.
What about Ivarian?
Istiana said between groans. Just worry about the baby version of him for now. Let's get him born into this world safely. Then we can figure out what to do with the adult version of him from an alternate future timeline later. Faye pulled her sister's arm over her shoulders too and swapped her armor for an ankle-length white dress with long, warm sleeves, woolly undergarments, leg-hugging pants, thick socks, and warm, lined boots that came up to her knees. That was so much better. You started this mess, so you'd better finish it, Faye said to Hithaglir when he just stood there wringing his hands. But she didn't think he'd do anything to help the angels. Hopefully they wouldn't need any help.
Watch over my son. I know he's an alternative version of him, but he's still my son. I don't want anything to happen to him.
Istiana blinked like she was trying to fight the tears trickling down her face.
All right, I'll do that. You have my word.
Hithaglir bowed, then hopped through the hole Faye made in the gateway wall when the adversary threw her at it.
I'll help him do that.
Jannar said, and he followed. The boys always stuck together, but so did the girls. Well, not Pristina, as she always went off on her own.
Come, we must go now. The baby is coming.
Vangiana held on when Istiana's knees buckled.
Teleport us now.
There's just one more thing. Here, catch.
JC tossed a blob of power, but it struck Faye, not her sister. What did you do? Faye staggered until Vangiana's two remaining daughters steadied her.
It's a temporary reprieve. Time stops for no one. So it marched on in the mortal world, but I don't think that's fair. So when you leave here, you'll teleport home and you'll arrive moments after you left. This is a one-time gift that will allow you to go back to when you left. It's my last gift. Now I must go.
JC waved to them as he faded away. His gift brought tears to her eyes because she had her own little one at home and she didn't want to miss a moment of his life. Unfortunately, she also liked to meddle in things. Life was more interesting when she involved herself in other people's affairs. As a bonus, she kept the world turning in the right direction toward a bright future for everyone.
Let me teleport us. I know where you live, sis, and I want to have my baby there.
Istiana said as the world whited out. Who was she to argue? Faye went along for the ride. After all, that's what younger sisters did when their elder sisters decided something.
Chapter 55. Embrace your dark side. Layla turned on her heel after Thaniel vanished into the gateway and headed for the side entrance to the palace. Since the main entrance would be too conspicuous even for her, Thaniel would distract the adversary. She felt it in her bones. Now, I need to do my part.
Where are you going?
Uriah called after her. To the abyss. If you won't help me, then I'll find another way to get there. Layla turned as a series of thuds sounded from somewhere. What made that noise? She turned and surveyed the grassy area outside the palace, but only she and Uriah stood there like fools.
What was that noise?
Uriah asked like she had any clue. I don't know, and I don't care. Layla faced the palace again, but Uriah grabbed her arm, and the palace grounds disappeared. When the light from his teleportation spell faded, they still stood outside the palace, but not in front of it anymore. So why did he teleport them if he wasn't taking them to the abyss? Before Layla could ask, Uriah pressed a finger to his lips and glanced around the side of the palace at something. Layla rolled her eyes and peered past him at more than a dozen Versati. Where did they come from? She whispered.
Inside the gateway, I saw a shadow struggling to leave the same way Thaniel entered. It must be them.
What are they doing? Layla stared at the Versati as they divided into two groups and argued with each other. One group had orange glowing eyes, but the other group's eyes glowed pink. That probably meant something, but they didn't speak loud enough for her to overhear them several hundred feet away. What could they possibly have to argue about? They worked for the Adversary. They must have something because the two lines merged, shoving, kicking, and hitting each other. Why are they fighting? Layla backed away when those wicked gray knives that could steal time crystals appeared. She rested a hand over her crystal, but it didn't exit her body by the most painful route possible. One side knocked the other out, and the fight ended with the Versities with glowing pink eyes victorious. They didn't leave, though. They bent over the fallen and revived them. Then a curious thing happened. The downed Versity's eyes turned pink or blue, and they rose, with help from the same Versity that just attacked them. How strange. When every one of the Versati who was beaten in the fight stood tall again, the entire party marched toward the entrance. Maybe I don't need Thaniel to create a distraction. Those Versati might make a better one if they do the same thing to the members of their kind inside the throne room. Melee darted around the side of the palace and headed for the same ornately carved double doors the Versati had just used.
Where are you going?
Uriah called after her as he followed at a distance. I'm following them. Layla thought that was obvious, but it must not be, since he asked.
Why? We still can't get past their friends in the throne room, but we need to get past them because the Adversary put the entrance to the stairway that leads to the dungeon in the throne room, and we need to go down there because the abyss is under it.
I know. If I'm right, they just threw off the Adversary's control, and they're about to help their brethren in the throne room do the same thing. Hopefully he could connect the dots from there and guess her plan. It wasn't much as plans went, but it was all she had right now, and doing something was better than standing around. She pulled open the palace doors and strode inside. Sounds of a scuffle ahead made her smile. I was right. Now she just needed to sneak past the fighting Versate and hope their fight drew their friends by the abyss. That might be hoping for too much, though, because the abyss was too far from the throne room for the sounds of the fight to carry to it.
It sounds like you were right,
Uriah said from right behind her. Then he teleported them away. When the light faded from his spell, they stood on the rocky island in the middle of the matte black fluid of the abyss. But they were the only ones there. Shadows ran up the narrow steps toward the dungeon level. They were probably the Versati they ran into earlier down here, but they weren't their problem anymore. The Versati in the throne room would deal with them. Layla stopped at the edge of the abyss. Its vast expanse rose and fell like it was breathing. Reality blurred as it skipped across its surface like a slung stone, leaving distortions behind. At least that was how her mind made sense of the bands of color that appeared and vanished again moments later. Beside her, Uriah stopped and gazed into the abyss too. What did he see when he looked upon it? Infinite possibilities or nothing at all? He turned to Layla, his voice tinged with an uncharacteristic uncertainty.
This place is everything and nothing all at once.
That's its job, Layla nodded. Why was he fixated on that? She could ask, but that wasn't important right now. We need to look for a way to shut down the gateway and stop it from drawing power from the abyss. But how to do that stumped her because there was no sign of the gateway here, and not a single tether anywhere she could see. But it was dim down here since all the light she could see came from her eyes or halo.
Go back to sleep,
said the woman, peering at them from the abyss as she popped her head above the surface. The dark fluid of the abyss dripped off her hair and face.
Send the angel away and become me again. I know what you're looking for and where to find it, but you can't access it anymore unless you dump your angelness into the abyss and become a goddess again.
The woman, whom she now recognized as her alter ego, ego, rose from the abyss as she stalked toward them. No, you're lying. Layla folded her arms and shook her head. This womanish creature was just spouting the same lies the adversary told her when he tricked her into dividing her nature and putting her angel self to sleep. But that part of her didn't stay down for long, and it even fomented a rebellion. No, she wasn't giving up any part of her again. Not for power, not for anything. It was stronger than the shadow that remained. I won't believe it this time. Layla stiffened her spine. I reject your lies. I am stronger whole than I am in pieces.
Then release me. You caged me when you took back your angelness, but one can't exist without their shadow side, especially not when you've always walked partly in the shadows.
The woman dripped black fluid as she stepped onto the rocky shore. That thick, viscous liquid covered all but her face. No, I'm someone else now. I'm not you. Layla stumbled away from the dripping creature and bumped into Uriah, but she couldn't escape her alter ego. The island was small, and she couldn't run up the stairs or leave here until she figured out what the adversary did down here and undid it. What if that creature tempting me knows the answer? Layla wanted nothing to do with her, but that question rattled around in her head, making her wonder, why this and why now? Could this be the only way the abyss itself could talk to them? By exploiting this weakness in her character? As she considered that, the creature stopped an arm's length away, and Layla flashed back to when she was an angel of the underworld. The moment she traded her wings and halo for a goddess's crown flashed before her eyes, and she recalled wading into the abyss to embrace the power of the unseen. Footsteps echoed on the stairs leading down to this lonely island as the memories faded. I'd left something behind when I bathed in the abyss, and it wasn't just my angelic nature.
Yes, you need me. Together, we're strong. Lock me away, and you become so weak you can't see what the adversary has done, nor can you counter it. Embrace me and evolve as you were meant to, beyond angels and demons and ex-gods.
The woman gestured to Uriah and the palace above. Should I do it? Layla considered that as the footsteps grew louder. Why not accept this bargain? I can't see what the adversary did. If doing what this creature says will fix that, then I must do it. Layla stepped forward, and the abyss rose and fell as if we're alive.
Layla, are you down here? Shout if you are.
She's down here,
Uriah said, reminding Layla he was here, listening to everything.
Why are you here, Morgana? I haven't seen you in a long time.
Faye and someone named JC sent me with a message.
White light blossomed above as Morgana held something up, and it illuminated her face. She was definitely an ex-god. She had the same build and general look as the rest of them. Faye, Layla, knew. She was the ex-goddess of fate and a born meddler. If Layla ever met one, then again, so was she. So who was she to judge? But who was JC? The name tickled something in the back of her mind, but she couldn't retrieve it. Her head was too full of questions right now, leaving no room for more.
What's the message?
They said to give you this, and that you'd know what to do with it.
Morgana reached the bottom step as Uriah rushed to grab the light from her, but he didn't give it to Layla as she expected. Instead, he turned and threw the light into the abyss. It struck the surface, creating multicolored rings around it, then sank into it as someone sighed. Why did you do that? Layla pointed at the spot where the light vanished.
Because that's what you do with powerful wishes. You give them to the abyss, and it decides if it can come true.
Uriah shrugged, like that should be obvious. Layla didn't get to ask for anything else, because her alter ego embraced her, and light and darkness strove within her as she stumbled toward the abyss.
Don't fight it. You were never meant to be divided. Take back the part you left in the abyss, for you are its angel, its protector, and the arbiter,
said a female voice from inside her mind. Now that was a job she'd gladly take on. Layla dived into the abyss, no longer afraid of her dark side. It wasn't evil. It was just a misunderstood part of her that reacted to the abyss's need for a protector. The abyss welcomed her in, and its surface smoothed out until it was as still and as reflective as silvered glass. So that's how he did it. Layla stared at the black tentacles sunk into the abyss, then followed them up to the swirling darkness at the base of the gateway.
What do you say?
Uriah asked from somewhere on shore. I see what the adversary did, and I know how to destroy it. Layla laughed. because the giddiness welling up inside her needed somewhere to go before she exploded from it.
Could you tell us so we can help?
Morgana asked as rocks rolled on the beach as she approached the edge. Of course, the adversary rooted his latest gateway in the abyss, like we thought, but the abyss is a physical manifestation of the unseen, so his gateway is also rooted in there too. It's fiendishly clever, but nothing is invincible. Layla spread her arms, and the abyss flowed away from the spot she glared at.
Here, you need something to cut that.
Morgana tossed a sword to Layla. Thanks, but I don't need it. You keep it, and use it on anyone who comes down here. Layla caught it and threw it back. Morgana caught the hilt like a pro and swung it down so the point faced the rocky ground.
Will do.
She blocked the bottom of the stairwell with her body and stood guard. Layla reached for the tether, and it bent away from her, but her will was stronger than its ability to resist her, so her next grab succeeded, and she wrapped her fingers around the tether and pulled. It broke apart in her hand, and its pieces liquefied as they landed on the mirrored surface of the abyss, reflecting the light from her eyes and halo at the dark gateway tunnel above.
How did you do that?
Uriah waded into the abyss to join her. I am the Abyss Protector now. Its power is mine to wield to protect it. Layla shrugged and reached for another tether. It helped that the adversary created the tethers and the gateway tunnel out of the abyss, and that was why it was so dark. Taking it apart should be child's play now, since the adversary had no power over the abyss anymore.
Does it need any other protectors?
Uriah pulled the glowing object he threw into the abyss back out of it and cupped his hands around it. Layla didn't need to think about that. The abyss sent its agreement. Yes, it does. Come here. Layla smiled as she held out her arms to him. Long had he been a fellow prisoner, and as much of a friend as her distrustful nature allowed. It was only right for him to become part of this new order too. Uriah stepped into her embrace and sighed as the abyss's darkness wrapped around them. Peace settled inside Layla, quieting the restlessness that drove her out of heaven a long time ago. She never expected to feel like she belonged somewhere, but right then, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing the thing she was made to do. Joy welled within her at finally finding her purpose. After a few more moments, Layla let go of her new partner in protecting this wondrous place. Uriah stepped back and stared at the white light, rising like a star until it pierced the gateway and disappeared inside it. Fly, little star. May your light guide others to find where they belong. Layla suppressed the urge to wave to that wish the abyss granted. She had work to do. She could get sentimental later. You take that side, and I'll take the tethers on that side. Let's dismantle this thing before it ruins someone's day.
What about Thaniel and the others?
Uriah asked as he waded toward the closest tether on his side of the gateway. What about them? Thaniel's an angel. She can go wherever she wants and she won't leave anyone else. So, go pull down those tethers. Let's mess up the adversary's plans. Layla smiled as she reached for the next one on her side. I hope he feels every tether that breaks, and I hope it feels like a time crystal drilling its way out of his chest. That would pay him back for some of the suffering he dealt out. As she tugged on the tethers, her thoughts swept back to the friends she never expected to make. I hope you're okay, Rosalie. Stick close to Thaniel if you can. She'll make sure you survive. I trust her. That was a new feeling, but it warmed Layla from the inside.
Chapter 56, The Devil's in the Details.
Where is it? I know it's here somewhere,
said the adversary, and he sounded frustrated. Good. He deserved a little frustration after all the trouble he caused, and I'm about to give him something else to be frustrated about. Daniel scanned the snowy tundra for him. Below her, a giant structure made of ice stretched into the distance, seemingly without end, but everything ended somewhere, so this thing must have an end too. Keep talking, so I can find you. The adversary didn't say anything more, but the crunch of snow indicated he was close by. Was Pristina with him? Did she still have Rosalie slung over her shoulder? Where is she? I forgot to ask. I just assumed she was here because Rosalie seemed like the kind of person to rush into danger. She's a woman after my own heart. Daniel landed on the long rectangular ice structure. It was wide enough to be a building of some kind, but why would someone need a miles-long building? And why make it out of ice in a tundra? She had so many questions as she padded as quietly as she could across the roof of the thing, dodging the cracks spreading across it. Thankfully, her boots had tiny spikes that dug into the ice and kept her from slipping. Otherwise, she might have found the adversary by falling on him. She still might do that later, since that would certainly surprise him. But first, she needed to see what he was doing. Thaniel peered over the edge at the adversary. He scanned the icy wasteland, searching for something while Pristina stood by him, stamping her feet to warm them. But there was no sign of Rosalie. Where did that girl go? Was she somewhere in the adversary's palace, back in hell? Should I go back there and look for her? As Thaniel wondered that, Layla's request echoed back to her. I guess not, since I'm supposed to distract the adversary. But he seems quite distracted right now. Do I need to add to that?
There it is.
The adversary headed away from the giant thing made of ice. Where was he going? Should I stop him? Daniel watched the adversary and Pristina push through the blowing snow, heading for more snow-covered tundra. How could there be anything else out here? An articulated metal hand tapped on her foot, and she nearly jumped off the structure in shock. Where did you come from? She whispered. The metal hand pointed at the other side of the structure. Daniel crept to the other side and peered over it at the twitching limbs of a giant metal creature that lay in pieces. Something about its facial features tickled her memory. I've seen that face before. It took a moment to recall where. Then she snapped her fingers. All the first angels had variations of that face,
Chaos is life,
said the disembodied head, half buried in the snow. Your creator might disagree with that. Daniel backed away from the agent of chaos because she didn't come here to deal with the first angels. Let the council handle them. The realms were safer with that creature in pieces. Who knew the first still existed? Azrael will never believe I saw one. I'll have to show him if I can find this place again. Daniel stepped over the metal hand, skittering back and forth across the roof like it didn't know what to do. Unfortunately, the adversary and Pristina disappeared into the blowing snow. I had better follow them. Daniel leaped off the ice structure and flapped her wings until a ball of darkness slammed into her stomach and knocked her out of the sky. Even though she reeled from the blow, she sent her wings away to protect them moments before she struck the ice-crusted snow back first. Her armor absorbed the energy from her fall and protected her from broken bones, so she popped to her feet the instant after she crash-landed. So, what's the plan? She had to ask, because the gateway was miles away from here. What could he possibly want in this icy wasteland?
None of your business.
Christina rushed her, but the dead ex-goddess slammed into her fist, face first. Idiot. You're not that bright, are you? Don't answer that. For your crimes, you've been judged and found wanting. Go back to hell. Thaniel grabbed the dead woman, and Pristina screamed as white light ate her. What an idiot. Didn't anyone tell her that any angel can send the dead to where they belong? Apparently, no one had. Oh well, good riddance to bad rubbish.
That won't stop her. She'll just come back here through the gateway.
As the adversary stalked toward her, his black and red robes billowed in the wind, buffeting them. I'll just send her away again, Thaniel shrugged, and hoped Layla would take down that damned gateway.
That won't work on me.
The adversary stopped an arm's length away. Unfortunately, Thaniel couldn't do the same thing to the adversary since he was an angel from an older generation. And worse still, he was elevated to the highest position an angel could hold before he turned against the creator. Before we fight, I just want to know one thing. Why come here? There's nothing to conquer and no souls to control. So why come to this icy place? What's here? Daniel kicked a fist-sized chunk of ice. Pain slammed into the back of her head as ice shards caught in her hair. Did someone hit me in the back of the head with a ball of ice? Her knees buckled and she landed on her knees in the snow as she struggled to beat back the pain. Angels were tough, but in physical realms where they had mass and something approximating a flesh and blood body, they could get hurt and maybe even lose consciousness. So Daniel swayed as she fought to keep her fleshy cage from flopping on its side, while this icy place spun around her. Who hit me? She couldn't turn her head to look without the pain jabbing hot spikes into her head, making thinking harder than it already was.
Do we still have a deal?
A man said as he rounded her. He had white hair and ornate robes that didn't quite match his trousers and fancy beaded shoes. Since he looked like a pale, masculine version of Faye, he was one of her brothers. She thought he was the one with a long name that started with an H. Hithagler, maybe? What deal? Daniel sat on her butt as the damage to her head healed. The adversary wasn't from her generation, so he wouldn't know how fast she could repair herself in a physical realm. While she healed, she'd just sit here and prod one of them into talking about their plans. Blondie looked like he wanted to spill every detail about his deal with the adversary, so she stared at him expectantly.
We're bringing back the days of our glory,
Hithagler said, and his eyes might have misted over because he rubbed at them. How nice. What does that mean? Only she could guess. These glory days he was talking about were in the deep past when she was a young and brash angel, just learning what she could do. I don't want to revisit those days. One time through training was enough. Ithaglir turned like he heard someone call his name.
I need to go. I'll do my part, but you'd better do yours.
Of course, we're so close now.
The adversary smiled like the smarmy salesman he was at heart and patted Hithaglir's shoulder. Blondie teleported away without saying anything else. Well, there went Plan A. Thaniel pushed to a stand and stayed upright. The world still tipped back and forth, but not as much. So she set her feet shoulder width apart and called her war axe. It dropped into her hand as if it was waiting for her summons, just out of sight.
Oh, come now. You don't think that will hurt me?
The adversary waved a hand, and a wall of darkness slammed into Thaniel, knocking her onto her butt in the snow again. But she clung to her axe and shoved its blade into the snow as she rose for round 2. Then a woman in black robes leaped over her and landed, sword swinging. By the glowing eye-shaped marks on her bare arms, she was probably one of the weirder ex-gods. The adversary parried every strike and blasted the ex-god, name unknown, in the stomach, knocking her backward into the snow. Before she could plow into her, Thaniel jumped aside. 3 identically dressed women ran toward her. Who were they? One woman unsheathed a sword from a sheath hidden by the folds of her skirt. Meanwhile, her 2 sisters raised their hands like they were about to cast a spell, but she never found out what they meant to do because they vanished in a teleportation spell, and so did the woman with 2 swords, and the weird glowing marks on her arms.
Well, that was strange,
The adversary said, echoing her thoughts. Then he extended his wings and flew away. Thaniel sent her axe away and recalled her wings and flapped them. She still wasn't sure what he was doing here or what this place had to do with a time long ago, until another giant ice structure appeared on the horizon. But this one was shaped like an arrow with a broken tip that glowed as the adversary headed for it. I think I know what he came here to do. How do I stop him? Thaniel sent her wings away and dived for the adversary. She landed on his back and wrapped her arms and legs around him to stop his wings from beating. They crashed into the snow and dug a furrow half a mile long before their slide ended. Thaniel fell off him and into the snow. Her armor saved her from cuts and bruises, so she rose and called her warhammer back to her hand.
You can't stop me.
The adversary blasted her with darkness again, sending her sliding away from him on her butt. Another blast struck her chest and pinned her in the snow.
Did you know angels can die?
The adversary rose, dusted off his robes, and righted his crown.
I learned how to unmake our kind. I'd give you a demonstration, but I'm late for a war, and this time I won't lose.
He didn't stride over and gloat. Instead, he marched toward that giant arrow that might be a dead timeline he intended to resurrect. Thaniel struggled to break free from the darkness pinning her to the snow, but it just spawned more tentacles and dug them into the snow. Damn it. She was trapped, and he was getting away. Would he succeed if he went back and fought the last war in heaven again? I don't want to find out. Thaniel tried to wriggle one arm free as she sent her hammer away and called her axe back. You've been listening to Storm the Gates, Book 3 of the Rogue Gods Trilogy by Melinda Kucsera. Subscribe to the channel so you'll be notified when the next part publishes. The Rogue Gods Trilogy is available as an ebook and paperback, and now a full cast audiobook. Click the link in the description to order your copy. If you love the Rogue Gods Trilogy, then you'll love Melinda's other epic fantasy adventure books too. They're just as full of magic and mayhem and characters who will do anything to achieve their goals. Check them out at the link in the description, and while you're there, sign up for her newsletter so her characters can talk directly to you. Thank you for listening.